Hey guys, this is Ben with Tilmor. Today we are going to go over bleeding the brakes on your Tilmor 520 tractor. But before we get started, let's go in here and let's disconnect the battery disconnect switch, and we're going to want to set the parking brake. So what we're going to need to do first is we're going to need to remove these two bolts on the battery cover and this bolt up here on the shifter cover. So we'll go ahead and do that. And by removing those bolts, it's just going to allow us to remove the whole fender later on. Next, what we're going to want to do is remove this cover here. And that is going to allow us to add brake fluid down here to our master cylinders. So go ahead and set that cover up here out of the way. And that's it for up here, and then we'll move around here to the right side. Obviously, as you know, see the wheel's already removed. Just refer to another video on the proper procedures and how to do that. After you got the wheel removed, go ahead and we're going to remove the rotor cover. Then we're actually going to remove this whole fender as well, just to give us more access. So we're going to go and remove our light, unplug our light, feed the wire back through here, and obviously this only applies to you if you have the work light package on your tractor. Next, what we're going to want to do is remove our fender. So we only need to remove the bottom two here. There's two here. And there's two here. So there should be, you only need to remove 6 bolts. So they all are going to have bolts, washers, and a nut. Come back here and remove this one. All right, and then there's 2 up here. And just hold up on it. There's removing the fender on your 520 tractor. So what we're going to do, so obviously here's your rotor, your caliper's mounted down here. What we're going to do is actually unbolt the caliper mount here, and we're going to let the caliper, we're going to actually fasten it so that the brake bleeders are at the highest point and to allow you to give you a little bit more room. But to do that, we're actually going to show you guys on a bare frame. So we're going to come back here, and this is how the tractors start. But this is a bare frame, and we wanted to do this so that we could show you guys better and a lot easier on how to do this. If you look here, this here is where your back hitch mounts. This is your front step. This here is where your final drive mounts, and your rotor is going to be running right here. First, what you're going to want to do, though, is you're going to want to take and you're going to want to put your screwdriver down in here. Think of this as the rotor. You're going to want to work that back and forth, just like that. It's going to spread your caliper open so that it comes off your rotor a lot easier. So after you get that separated a little bit, You don't have to go real far, just a little bit of pressure back and forth. You're going to want to come in here and you're going to want to unbolt your rotor mount, your caliper mount actually. We'll set all of our bolts in here. Then after you unbolt this one, it is going to be loose, so just be ready to catch it or hold it so it doesn't fall. So pull all your bolts out there. On your tractor, you're going to have zip ties here and here. You're going to want to take and cut those zip ties. That way that hose can just hang down there. Basically, this is how we're going to mount our caliper to bleed it. Basically get it so the bleeders are straight up. The reason we do that is to get it straight vertical, it's straight up and down, and the bleeders are at your highest point. Now that you got the caliper mounted vertically, you're ready to bleed the brakes. Take note though that the bleeder has an adapter that attaches it to the caliper. You're going to want to use the 1/4 inch hex to bleed the brakes. It uses a 1/4 inch wrench there. So what we're going to want to do next is go ahead and remove our cap on our master cylinder, add fluid, you're going to want to attach a hose to the end of the bleeder. It controls the direction of the fluid, makes way less of a mess, and it helps you to be able to see some of the air flowing out of the caliper. So you just want to attach it just like that, and then direct the hose down in a bucket. So now that we have fluid in our master cylinder, we got our hose on. Next, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to place a spacer in the caliper. Basically, it's acting as our rotor. It's going to sit in there just like that. And until we get fluid and the caliper is actually clamping down, you're going to have to hold it with your hand. So this is maybe where when you're on the tractor, you're going to need somebody to help you to sit on the seat to push the pedal, but that's why we did it with this bare frame so that I could show all the steps. But you're going to need a helper here, and go ahead and open your bleeder just like that, and start pumping the pedal just to get fluid. To move to the caliper. When you're pumping the pedal, only pump it about halfway down, because if you pump it too far, it could damage the master cylinder. As you notice, we're pushing it down halfway, pulling it up and waiting a split second, and then pushing it back down so that it can actually gather fluid and push it through. have some fluid coming through the caliper. So press your pedal down and go ahead and lock your bleeder. Doesn't have to be super tight. You just want to be able to lock it so the air can't come back in the caliper. So go ahead and pump your pedal up and hold down on it. And you're pushing pressure on it. Go ahead, open your bleeder, and the pedal will go down further. And hold the pedal in the down position and then lock your bleeder closed. You're going to have to continue to do this. Pump it up, and hold it, and open your bleeder. And you'll see the fluid go out. And lock your bleeder, let your pedal up. You never want your pedal to be traveling up when the bleeder is open, because then you're just sucking air back into the system, and then it just takes longer to bleed it, and you'll never end up getting it bled. So hold your pedal down after you've pumped it, open your bleeder, let the fluid release, lock your bleeder, let your pedal come up. So now what we're going to do, we will come back to this side. We're going to go to the inside bleeder. You want to bleed the outside bleeder first, and then you'll move your way into the inside bleeder. So we'll remove our hose, put our hose on the inside, and let's do the same thing. We have fluid in the caliper now. That's what it took a while to pump the pedal and get fluid into the caliper. Now we have fluid into the caliper. We're just trying to get the excess air out of it that's trapped in there. So we're going to pump it up and hold pressure on it. We're going to open our bleeder. Pump it up, hold pressure, and open our bleeder. Allow it to go down, lock the bleeder. Pump it up. Don't lock your bleeder too tight or you'll have trouble getting it open. Pump it up, open your bleeder, push down on it while the bleeder's open. Then lock your bleeder closed, allow your pedal to come up. Do the same thing. Pump it up, hold pressure, open your bleeder, allow your pedal to go down, lock your bleeder, let your pedal come back up. Our hose keeps wanting to fall off. So let's do this a couple more times. We're going to put pressure on it, hold it down, open our bleeder. And if you see the fluid coming out there, there's actually no air bubbles in it. Let's do it one more time. Hold pressure, and you'll see the fluid flowing through it. There's no big air bubbles coming out. So then, as your pedal's in the downward position, lock your bleeder. Let's make sure this one's good and locked. Let your pedal come up. Let's do the outside one more time. Go ahead and put your hose on there. So what we want to do is put pressure on it, open the bleeder. There we had some air trapped in that one. Push down. When the pedal's down, go ahead and lock your bleeder. Release your pedal, allow it to come up. Pump it up. Open the bleeder. When the pedal's down, lock your bleeder. Let your pedal come back up. Pump it up. There was still a little bit of air trapped in that one. Lock your bleeder, allow your pedal to come up. Open it. Alrighty, that one's good. No air came out of it that time. Make sure you lock your bleeder, allow your pedal to come back up. You can remove your hose. We'll clean this all up later, but make sure your bleeders are good and tight. Use a small wrench, that way you don't over tighten them and strip them out. Okay, we'll go ahead, and I like to wipe all the bleeders off, clean them up real good, and then we'll fill up our reservoir. So when you're doing this, make sure you keep an eye on your reservoirs, because if you allow it to go empty, then you just allow air to get back into the line and into the caliper, and you're just going to basically have to start over. So always make sure that there's some fluid covering the bottom. Go ahead and fill it up anywhere from 3/8 to 1/2 inch from the top. So basically what I like to do then is go ahead and just pump it up. Just hold pressure on it, and just to check and make sure that these bleeders are good and sealed up. And they definitely look like they are. So, alrighty. So that pedal is nice and firm. It's not squishy. You don't have to pump it a couple times to get a good solid pedal. A next little tip that I'll give you, if Brent, you want to come around here, we're going to show you how to adjust the brakes. And there's not a lot of adjustment here, but basically we're taking up the free travel. So this one actually is not, it's not bled, but I'm just, for demonstration purposes, you see this here is the free travel in the brakes. This one over here has very little free travel. Basically, to get your pedals more aligned, you can adjust that. But what we want to do is, the way to do that is we come down here and you want to remove this pin from the clevis. Now you got to hold it or the brake can fall down. But you can adjust it by moving this clevis here. And basically you're screwing the clevis towards you. And then what you want to do, so there, we've actually taken some of that out. We can take more of it out. So we pull the pin out, screw the clevis out towards you, and now there's barely any free travel in that. It matches that one. And I always try to adjust the free travel accordingly. You give one a little less, one a little more to make it so the pedals are even. But what you want to make sure of, when the pedal is clear up, that this pin moves freely, because you can adjust them too tight and then it will always be putting pressure on your rotors. But make sure that pin right there, when the pedal is clear up, that pin moves freely. So that is bleeding the brakes on your 520 tractor. I know it's time consuming and it involves a friend, but if you feel like, for any reason you have to change any of these components and you have to bleed your brakes, this is the best way to do it. If you feel like you have a little bit of air in your pedal, it's a little bit spongy, this is what you got to do. All right, after you have everything bled, you got a good firm pedal, there's no air left in the system, let's go ahead and let's put it all back together. So number one, we're going to want to put our cap back on. And it just slides up on there and it sits in that middle little divot there. So next, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to remove your spacer and get my screwdriver, and this is how you're going to want to actually take it out of the rotor as well. But you're going to just put it in there and just work it back and forth. And that just opens it up just a little bit, just enough that it allows the spacer to slide out. And you're going to need to do that to get it back over the rotor. So what you'll do next is just unbolt it. Let's get our bucket out of here so we don't end up with tools or hardware in our brake fluid. Make sure you kind of hold it all there so it doesn't end up hitting the ground. So you're going to have to just work it up on the rotor. If you think of it, this piece is going to be on the outside, the caliper is going to be on the inside. And it's going to kind of just roll right up onto your rotor. And then the bolt heads are on the outside, and the nut would be on the inside. Alrighty. Thank you to my assistant for getting the hardware I dropped. Go ahead and just start them all. And then we'll just tighten them up. Alright, and there we did. We mounted it back up. One thing that I noticed when I was prepping for this video, that this bolt right here, when the rotor is in there, this bolt, it's a little bit tricky to get out. You can get it out, you'll just need to use swivel socket, ratchet wrench, whatever you need. This one is a little bit tricky. The other ones are all pretty simple to get out, but this is what it's going to look like. You just roll it back up onto that rotor, get it all bolted fast, and then we'll go back over here and we'll put the fender back on. We got everything all mounted up. Everything operates how it should. We'll go ahead and put our fender in here. One bolt started, and it'll kind of sit there. You might need someone to help you hold the fender while you get the bolts started. Get the top ones, just kind of just all hold it up into place. And I always like to kind of push up and forward on this, make sure your impact is going the right way. Tighten all 6 bolts. This one you'll need a wrench for it. And then after we get all 6 of those tight, let's fish our wire back through. If your tractor has work lights, this can be a little bit challenging. Just like that. It works if you have a little pocket screwdriver to help direct it up through the hole. Just click that back together. The fender's all on. Let's go ahead and we'll put the rotor cover on, and then we'll go back around and I'll show you. These are the bolts that we had to take out first to allow the fender to come off. So let's go ahead. And when you do the rotor cover, just kind of look up in here in the main battery wire. Make sure that the rotor cover is slipping under that. And you'll know, it should fit up in there real smooth. If you actually have to push it in and there's resistance, then it's pushing against something. And we got to figure out what that is. When you start these, start them all by hand. Don't tighten any of them until we got them all started. When I tighten them, I always try to hold it basically in the same spot so that the bolt's touching the same spot when you put it back together. So now we'll swing around and we'll put the other bolts in. Let's go ahead and let's do the battery. Again, get them started by hand. On this one, when you put it back together, kind of reach in there and pick up on the back of the battery box before you tighten them. That way they're not laying on any of the cables. Let's get this one started. All right, now we have to put on the cover for the master cylinders down here. Alrighty, get that one tightened up, and that's it, guys. That is bleeding the brakes on the Tilmor 520 tractor. If there's anything else you guys want to see, please reach out. Let us know if you have any questions. Feel free to ask. We're here to help. Thank you, guys.